in favor? All opposed? All right. So we'll start with you, Miss Jeannie Mack, if you don't care to come forward and catch us up to speed on the Juvenile Detention Center.
Good evening to everyone. It's been pretty busy at JDC. I think our average daily population of late has been 26. So, you know, we've been running in the teens the last several years. So this has been kind of a, you know, where are we going? It seems to be like some younger kids are getting to the age of being able to come to JDC right now, and some of the older kids are tapping out and going to the adult side. Hopefully they're not going to the adult jail, but so that's why our numbers are high. We've had some gang activity, as I'm sure you've read in the paper lately. Those are some 19-year-olds, but some of the younger ones were involved as well. But we're just moving along, trying to keep the building maintained. We've had a lot of maintenance issues, so it's been rough kind of juggling, making sure we have enough beds that we can hold all these kids with all of our separations and maintenance issues. But Dwight Gonzalez does a really good job of keeping us patched up so we can get those things taken care of. But otherwise, it's business as usual, and we make plans to deal with what we've got.
Yes, J.P. Ecke.
With the increased population at JDC, then you're really going to need this court to fund the Christmas dinner, whatever you provide for them at Christmas. And I just wanted to remind everybody that that's what we usually do.
Thank you.
As help
Mr.
Jeannie
Tom
Mack.
just helped.
Pardon?
Mr. Tom just helped. He's always the first.
That's why they call him Daddy Big Bucks.
That's right.
But thank you.
So I'm assuming any other donations like that from anyone you'd be happy to take after the
Sure.
meeting's over with?
Yes, thank you so much.
There you go. Save you a postage stamp. Any other questions for Ms. Cheney? All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Have happy holidays.
All right, Sheriff, you will jump in here at, I guess, 3.1 now. And unfortunately, our county's having a lot of used to be out of character activity, but I think it's becoming more and more of a happening. So we'll get an update on what happened yesterday with the shooting.
Sorry, I didn't have an agenda in front of me. I didn't know what 3.1 was, but so yesterday, these incidents are becoming all too frequent, as you all know. And I don't know if you've seen the news today or not to even know what I'm talking about, but we responded to a domestic call yesterday, last night, and it originated with a young male crying hysterically that his mother was being attacked and beaten. And I won't go into the whole process, but we responded. The fight was still going on when we got there as the deputies entered residence. The lady was ejected from a room. A deputy removed her from that area. The suspect entered a hallway where three of our deputies were positioned with a shotgun and leveled it off at them, and then they fired on him. And he's deceased. He was pronounced last night. None of the deputies were hurt other than, of course, mentally, you know, that they've got to go through. We've got a critical incident debriefing scheduled for this week for those guys. As part of our protocol, they're placed on administrative leave until we can get this all sorted out. The Arkansas State Police is reviewing, investigating the case. So anyway, what's going on behind me?
I'm not sure.
There's something happening. Oh. So anyway, our guys are in good shape, and that's the lowdown.
Well, I'll just say we appreciate that at the end of the day that someone's between us and these kind of folks and the sacrifice that we see these officers put themselves out for to handle this before and after the predicament, so.
I'm sorry, Joel, what?
Nope, you're good. We just appreciate what you guys do. We always do, but it's very prominent in situations like this when not only do they take the risk, but then they bear the burden of it afterwards, so.
Yeah, it's just getting to be all too frequent, but I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon, so. Anyway,
Pause for just one moment. Chief Gales?
We got a little problem with health here. Harvey's gonna take Joe home.
I think Tom's done it.
Tom drove in, it's okay.
We got a little medical emergency going here.
Everybody's gonna drive.
You're gonna put Uber out of business. We got 6 people out there to take Joe home, so.
He's an important guy.
That's right.
He deserves it. Anything else on that?
Any questions on that from anyone? JP Balls?
This is not related really to that, but do you guys have mental, I know you said they're gonna go through a debriefing, but do you provide like any mental health professionals for those guys to talk to or anything like that?
You know, the county, we've got an EAP program that they're afforded the opportunity to go through. Hey, Jay, on our guys that are involved in the shooting, is there any mandatory mental health screening, or is it basically through the crisis debriefing?
And then we offer them to go see our psychiatrist that we have.
But not required?
No, it's offered and
Yeah.
needed or wanted.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, we're light years ahead of where we were 20 years ago, and we recognize that quite a disservice was done for our guys that were involved in these incidents, and we just kind of patted them on the back, put them back to work. Well, now we recognize that there's a lot that goes into this. A lot of baggage accompanies a shooting, and so we're in that. The critical incident debriefing has been one of the most important facets of this that's been put in place over the years, and it's very helpful because they're in a room with their peers. And it's not just the deputies that are involved, it's dispatch and EMTs, everybody that was there at the time, and they can talk it out and get a lot of stuff figured out. So anyway, thanks for asking.
And that's all covered under the Employee Assistance Program?
Well, actually, the critical incident debriefing is, there's no charge of that. It's just, it's basically volunteers that are trained to come in and conduct those programs. Now, as far as follow-up, if they need counseling or whatever, the EAP jumps in and gets it kick-started.
Any other questions, comments on this? All right, we'll jump right into our enforcement activity report then, 4.1.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Get to the enforcement report here. Animal calls were up a little bit, but they kind of fluctuate in that 100 to 115 monthly, so nothing out of the ordinary. But you know, even in the wintertime, they still keep coming in. Had a big, our training hours are up. We had each year, Sheriff Helder brings in a leadership speaker to provide leadership training to every employee at the Sheriff's Office. And for the past 3 years, we partnered with Fayetteville and Springdale to have all their employees come. And so this was a mandatory 4-hour training for every employee, and some phenomenal training. So we think it's beneficial from the first brand new jailer all the way up to the sheriff and I to have this training, because even the brand new people that we hire, we consider them leaders, either when they're working in the pod or when they're with their families or out in the public. We consider them leaders, and we want them to have that leadership training. So it was very beneficial and well received. So that's one reason our training hours are up. Nothing else remarkable to report on, to note on the report, but I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions for JP Ecke?
Thank you. I don't know if you can answer this question, maybe you know everything. I'm sure you can. When you talk about bed space, and because further down it talks about detention pretrial versus total bed count, how many beds do you have designated just for women?
Well, Randall, how many women beds do we have?
Is that a Randall question?
Well, probably more than me. I can tell you,
Started out with 62 beds is what was proposed, and the way it's increased down through the years, we have about 135 beds now. We had to do some relocating to have enough room.
with 145 or 150 women in those 135
See,
beds.
That's what
Yeah.
I was going to ask. How many of those detainees are women? I mean, so we have 135?
Beds, yes,
Beds.
detainee beds, but we run about 145 to 150 women on average.
Okay.
So, you know, the ones that
Where
don't
do
have
they,
a beds.
I'm curious, just where do they, if they're there overnight?
Oh,
Do
they
we
just-
have sleeping bags? I mean,
It was
what do you do?
a
Just
mattress
cots?
a mattress on the floor, or two
Mattress.
mattresses. You give them
Okay.
2 mattresses, and then they sleep on the floor.
okay. So even on the women's population side, we are running
Oh, yeah,
Full.
yep,
full to overflowing.
yep. Over capacity.
Because a lot of attention has been made to, I guess, more of on the male side than the female side.
Right,
And I
but,
was just
but,
curious.
yeah, every conference or study that they do says that the female population is the fastest growing inmate population out there, and that you better get ready to manage that
Is that-
population.
Is that due, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
No,
in,
no.
in mid-sentence. Is that due to drug probation violations
I
or
think-
violent crime?
I think drugs is a big part of it, which leads to other crimes. But you know, we just, you know, whenever I started, of course, that was back shortly after the earth cooled. You know, we had 6 female beds, and so now we've got 135, and they're full. So
Quit talking about my birthday that way, okay, that's all right. 6 beds.
yeah, so yeah, you know, that well in the 80s we had 6 beds over there, and we doubled that and made 12 beds, and so we moved into the new jail, and we thought, man, 62 beds will never fill that up, and so you know, we've had to convert some other spaces into female housing, and so now we've got 135 beds, and they're, you know, we're maxed out there, so it is a growing population.
Any other questions on the enforcement and activity report? I think we're jumping ahead to detention center. We'll catch that. You got one for that? Okay. Any more questions for Major Cantrell on activity and enforcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. So we're half done already, Randall. You're ahead of the game, so.
This is great, great. All right, good evening. Things hadn't changed much. Like I say, business is really good. Numbers are staying up. I mean, there's, you know, like last week, for no reason, maybe the cold weather a little bit, but we was having 25 or 30 to book of a morning left. Just trying, never getting caught up on booking. I mean, being brought in everywhere. But as you can see, our booking numbers are up here. And they was talking about the females that sleeping on the floor. The guys, everybody's the same way, gets 2 mattresses. And today we had 63 sleeping on the floor. And we're trying our best to turn, you know, the prosecutor is bending over backwards to help us, and we're trying to turn loose everybody we can to help this number, but we're not having much luck.
I know this question will come up eventually. What's our total population today at the jail? Give or take.
The high count today, a while ago, I just looked, was 715.
Okay.
And it just keeps increasing where, on here it says, you know, our daily average last month was 700. You know, a year ago it was 655. So there's, it's not, anything's not going backwards. Everything just keeps coming in.
J.P. Dennis. I'm sorry, get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question from one of my constituents, because he talked to me about it, and it was actually his idea, and give him credit for it. He wanted to know, and he said he had actually read up on it and had learned of other detention centers having a split shift because they're overcrowded as well, and that the bed would not be assigned to a person, but, you'd have a split shift in the day where you slept during this 8-hour period of time, and this one slept this 8-hour period.
We have done that in the past, a long time ago, where our trustees actually get up and go to work for 12 hours. They're out, and at one time we did, they rolled their mats up and other people rolled theirs back. But that's just actually the trustees that work in the facility, the ones that's been sentenced that we call trustees. That's about the only people you can do it with, because everybody else is still there. They don't, they're in their cell, they don't get to go anywhere or do anything.
Okay, there's no place for them.
Right, but we have done that a little bit, but they're still like the trustees. There may be a 32-man cell, and we may have 50 in there, but, they're sleeping on the floor. Or basically, they could trade out just what you're saying. But we have done that in the past in the old jail. That is a good idea.
I'll pass that along to you.
My apologies, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed that in 17, you'd already sent 364 prisoners to sent to prison. This year, only 330. You have any perspective on exactly why such a difference?
Well, we just, they call us and tell them we can take so many in. We can't call and tell them or whatever, but usually they're plumb full too, and they'll turn so many out, and then they call us, so they call all 75 counties, and then whatever they, tell us to bring, we bring down.
So it's basically the state institutions all full, so they're just leaving them with you.
Well, that's, yes, sir.
I'm frustrated with that whole situation, but anyhow, I don't know. I guess we need more contacts in Little Rock. I guess one thing I've wondered about, what does the cost look like on some of these minimum security situations, your cost there versus the regular jail? Is it much less expensive to maintain these prisoners in the minimum security than it is in the primary jail?
Yes, we have the 100-bed work release built over there. And my understanding is, when we built this, it was the hard cells was about $300 square foot, and this was about $100. So yes, there's quite a difference on them numbers.
Do you have any idea what percentage of your prisoners you can move out of the hard cells into that minimum security if we had more space there?
Well, we've got a classification system that we have, and the first 1 or 2 levels you could probably fill another 100-bed facility with it.
Okay, so if you took 100 prisoners out of the hard cells in the minimum security, that would probably help get people off the floor and take care of that primary crowding problem there?
It would probably, yes, a little bit. I mean, the thing is, we're turning so many loose now, so we're still turning loose 200 a month.
Yeah.
So if that ever stops, or we're going to run out of people to turn out,
That's what I'm afraid of.
And then there we are. We're back in the same boat where that situation wouldn't help, but it would if we had the people to put in it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Last minute. JPS.
Sorry, last minute. Thank you very much, Chair. The one thing that I noticed is the federal prisoners are up, and I know y'all have been working on that. That's not necessarily a bad thing, I think.
No, that really does help with the budget.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
So now we're on to, unless there are any other questions, on to detention pretrial versus total bed count. Looks like, again, business is good. Yes.
Yeah, Ann's not here, but yeah, we're over 400. That number doesn't seem like we can get it under it, and it goes right back. It's 410, 425.
She's done such a good job, she doesn't even have to be here to
Right,
get the
everybody
question
knows.
asked.
I should have already had that on here. I should add it to the bottom of the sheet.
Any questions, comments on detention pretrial and total bed count? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, item 5, we have the proposed bond issue update on the jail expansion. I think I heard any, many, miny, mo.
We nominated the judge, but he refused.
Well, we've been in contact with bond counsel, and he just this evening sent me a draft ordinance to look at and to play with and tweak and get some information in. But, you know, I suppose that, you know, we've talked about how much we want to levy and then how much we want to sunset. And so I suppose that we could give you some suggestions, and I think we have a half cent tax and sunset a quarter. But, you know, ultimately I think it's your choice and your decision to make. So I think that's something that would generate discussion around the court as to what we want this ordinance to have in it as far as the levy, and then the amount that we want to try to sell bonds for. I mean, how many dollars or how many millions of dollars of bonds we want to sell. And I was thinking up here, this just wrenches my guts to think that we're talking in millions of dollars, and we throw it around like it's just, you know, going to Walmart and spending $100 for groceries, and we talk about millions. It just, I don't, I don't like it. But yeah, I know it's the nature of the beast, and that we have to have a jail or we'll have anarchy and so all that. But anyway, I've just started digesting this ordinance. I don't have a lot of information to share with you, except that we'd like to get some guidance on what direction to go.
Do you know when you'll have something to kind of present to us as a starting point on that bond issue?
Well, obviously, he just sent it to me this afternoon, and then I'll need to look at it and get it over to County Attorney Lester and make sure he looks at it and sees that it kind of fits what he thinks it should say. We're using Shep Russell from the Friday Eldridge and Clark Law Firm, and he's been doing public finance stuff since 1978. So, I mean, this is his area of expertise. So we felt comfortable that he's going to have it written correctly, and that there won't be any issues on down the road the way it's written. We just need to know what numbers to plug in.
Do you have did he give you any numbers that you can share with us tonight?
Well, he just wrote it up on the half cent and then sunset quarter cent. You know, the architect thought about 30 million to do the expansion we talked about, but then there was discussion on the court about, well, how much that was for the 600 bed expansion. There was talk about, well, do we want to go 600? You know, how big do we want to go? What do we want to do? So, you know, I think that's our suggestion, is that we go 600, and that's their projection about 15 years out. And, you know, I think it's going to be hard to forecast much further than that on what we're going to do in this region. We know it's growing, and we know it's growing at a phenomenal rate, but, you know, I don't know, you start trying to forecast too much further than that, it may get into just the swag method.
Okay. Any questions? I know this is a little generic, but do we have any questions? J.P. Ecke.
Thank you. You know, the Russell Hill, I guess, method of doing business, he always gets 3 bids.
Right.
Did we get any other bids from other architects on what would it cost to build?
No, we haven't
the
yet.
plots?
We're just, you know, in the preliminary stages.
Because, I mean, what I'm thinking is if we had a clear picture, they might all come out the same. But if they don't, then how much of a bond do we really need?
Right.
And so that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think on our bond, we have to kind of come up with a not to exceed this much, and then we start getting bids and finding out what the actual dollars are. But we kind of just say, you know, that's what I've noticed with Fayetteville and Springdale and Rogers when they've done theirs. They do their bond that says not to exceed this much money, and so much for this part of it, so much for this part of it. You know, because they're doing multi projects, Fayetteville and Springdale and Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
But so Mr. Russell says, Shep Russell down at the Friday firm, that we probably need to talk with a bond underwriter, and he'll tell us what it'll cost to market those bonds, and so that if we want to pay it back in this amount of time, then, you know, we can theoretically sell bonds for this much or this many dollars worth of bonds. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, we will get some competitive bids once we kind of get down ready to start doing some actual construction.
think if I remember right, Mr. Hill told us, Bobby Hill told us that a half cent would generate around $20 million of revenue a year. So we're
Right,
looking at
yeah.
about a year and a half before that half cent sales tax would sunset to a quarter as been
Right.
proposed. So
Right.
construction could maybe be paid for in a year and a half's time of that half cent levy. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, yeah.
JP Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I read in the paper recently that the state was looking at doing a similar expansion, but their numbers came in at like 35 million, 300, much larger than our projections. Instead of 30 million, like 35 million, 38 million or whatever, I don't remember what. But I just wondered why their numbers might be coming in that much higher than our numbers. And of course, always concerned about overrun.
Right, for a state prison, they're talking about 35 million for a state prison, or, I didn't follow you, what was the state gonna,
They were talking about expansion possibilities, and their projection for the same size expansion, as I understood, was $5 to $8 million more than what we were projecting. And I wondered why the differential there and the possibility that we're underestimating real cost.
yeah, I don't know, unless it has to do with maybe land acquisition. We've got the land, so we don't have to, one thing, acquire any land. We're talking about 100 of those 600 being the minimum security, which we can build at, substantially less money, than 500 beds of the hardened, beds, and then 100 minimum security, so, that's part of it. So, yeah, but I don't know what the differential is, the information we got was, from our architect, and they've built these jails all over Arkansas and Tennessee and southern Missouri, so they've got a lot of knowledge about building jails, which, building a jail is kind of unique, and it's like a hospital. They're a little different than building an office building or a lot of other things, so they've got a lot of experience, and they've got a pretty good feel for what it costs to put one of these together.
Okay, my second consideration was it seems to me that since minimum security capacity costs about a third of what the hard capacity costs, that we might look at doubling that minimum security space to take some pressure off the hard space. And I don't know what that would do to the numbers, but I think it's always good to have second opinions about proposals, not just take a set of specs and say this is what we're going to do, but hear from some other people that build jails and hear their proposals about how they might recommend handling this thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if y'all have already reached out to some of those people or what the prospects are. I know we typically ask for bids on anything like that.
Right.
And all we've heard about so far is just one
Right.
potential contractor.
I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. I think we can do bids for a contractor, or we can do a construction manager situation where we request for proposals on who will do us the best job, and then the county judge, and I suppose with the help of the county attorney and the sheriff and whoever he picks, we'll pick the one that they think will do the best job for the county, and then that construction manager puts everything out for bids and gets the lowest prices and the best deal. But we hire the construction manager on a kind of a contingency fee based on what the cost of the building is, so they kind of work on a
I would
percentage.
sure like to see some proposals about the concept of increasing this minimum security space compared to the hard space.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions along that?
Yeah,
It's a little-
we
a
hope to
little
have something for you to look at hard and fast at the December 20th meeting, is what our goal is, to have this ordinance fleshed out enough that the court could look at it and then start digesting it and seeing how they want to proceed with it.
Do you anticipate any major changes from those kind of top-end half-cent sales tax, quarter-cent sunset, et cetera, that process from what he gave you today?
No, I think that unless somebody's got a different idea, that's how we did the last one, and it worked well. So I think unless somebody's got a different idea or a better idea, that's what we'll stick with. And obviously, when we start discussing it, then we can modify those numbers, amend them in the ordinance as we go through the process of approving it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Then next, we have an overview from the sheriff on the 287G program. know many of you probably received emails today regarding this from a couple of folks, so we just wanted to, it was very timely since today's our meeting, just to have a discussion around that, so I wanted to make an opportunity for Sheriff Elder.
An overview of the program or an overview of that email?
However you want to respond, I think you were in on those emails, so if there's anything in that we need to know just to bring us up to speed on what you do, how you handle it, and why, then just an opportunity to do that.
Right. So I just got the email when you all did, and probably after. I've been in staff meetings all afternoon, so I've tried to come up to speed before the meeting, anticipating that somebody might have a question. Without, what was that? Drop your gun out of your purse, Eva?
That's my smocking gun.
So, anyway, an arrest was made for a sexual assault on a person back in August by Fayetteville Police Department. First of all, no, I can't go into great detail. There's a juvenile involved in this whole process, so I can't really go into great detail, but our victim was young. Let's just say that. And then at some point, after 4 months or so, my understanding is the person of interest had a hold placed on him by immigration. And during the time that she was in jail, she got married. And I can't even get into that. But at any rate, at some point, the victim declined to testify or prosecute. So on December, I may get my dates wrong, but December 5th, perhaps, Judge Lindsay dismissed those charges, or the prosecutor's office did. There was an order at any rate. We were unaware that the charges had been dropped, null pros, basically, on this person until December 7th. And we were notified then by the defendant's attorney that this had occurred. And it was at the 11 and a half hour of the 48-hour hold requirements. So in absence of the order, then our people in the jail started scrambling around trying to verify that this person had been authorized by the court to be released. And then when they were able to finally do that, then they released her. But in the meantime, we had a 287G person in. They made contact with immigration to say, look, this person is being released, and we're under order from a circuit judge to release her. You need to know that. And so we released her, and then the immigration guy came. When she got out the parking lot, they arrested her and put her back in jail on their charge, which I don't know how much I'm able to go into what their charges are, but I think this person was originally here on a student visa and then never got upgraded their work visa like 4 years ago. So their hold is not based on the aggravated assault or sexual assault charge. It's based on their charge of violation of whatever rule that is in the immigration books on the visa expiration and non-application for the upgrade. The email I got was much more salacious than that, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. We were not aware of the initial court order, and when we put into process getting her released. That's what I know at this point. That's what I learned in the last half hour. I was out of state when all this occurred.
Any questions? Yes, JPA,
There was
Madison.
the part of the email that we got that I didn't understand, like the ICE agent was waiting outside, like he couldn't go inside.
I don't know the reason for that, to be honest with you. I just know that our deputy that's cross-trained notified him that she was being released, and he made a determination. But I don't know why.
Because it almost, the way, it made it sound like it was almost intentional that he was told to wait outside.
I don't think we would tell him to do that. I think he made that decision on his own, and I don't know if that's based, I don't know if I really don't know, because he could certainly have arrested her in our facility, in the lobby or wherever. And, but
Okay, well,
honestly, I don't know
Because I
either.
think the information is purportedly coming from him, so I don't know,
Yeah,
saying that he couldn't come in.
it's a public facility, so I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. I haven't talked to him. I don't know. Sorry about that.
Chippy balls.
I know you've been beat up in the community about this, so, and I've never had a conversation with you. Why do we participate in 287G, since we're one of the only two counties in the state that do it?
So, we've been, it takes a little bit of history to get to the point to where I answer that question, but 11 years ago, I became sheriff in '05. And then, you know, back during that time, you know, immigration was definitely a hot button issue throughout our communities. But the majority of the hot button was coming from the people that were very angry about the immigration issue, that why aren't we doing something on the enforcement end of things? And so about 2010, no, I guess it would have been at 7 or 8. I think I was in my second term. We became aware of the 287G program. And in my mind, having been on Fayetteville Police Department, where we would get called in the middle of the night or one of these covert deals to go do a workplace enforcement thing where we would assist immigration, go in to a poultry plant or somewhere and then just pounce on them and everybody's scurrying around. I just never really did like that involvement. I don't know. I was never comfortable with that. And it appeared to me that with the 287G program, partnering with, cross-training with immigration, in particular the detention model, I felt like it was the best of all worlds for the community and for law enforcement. I would be sitting at a table and making decisions instead of just being called in the dark of night saying, come help us do this. The reason, I'm gonna back up just a moment. There were three options at the time that we could participate in partnership with 287G. That was to become part of a task force program to where we had investigators that would partner with immigration, identify, you know, felons, people that were doing a lot of different things, whether it's drugs or human trafficking, a lot of things. We could participate in that kind of a program. We could participate in cross-training for our patrol deputies to basically become, in absence of immigration officers on the street. And then the third part of that was the detention model. We chose to do the task force model and the detention model. I wanted to stay as far away from the cross-training of our deputies to help perform that function because of racial profiling. I just felt like it was really going to open the door to a problem that we just didn't need to bite off. And we chose not to do that. And sure enough, it wasn't a year. Some of our neighboring police departments chose to do that, and it wasn't long. They were shut down, and it was a bad deal. I mean, we could predict that from the beginning. I think during President Obama's tenure, obviously the 287G program came under fire. And one of the first to fall after the patrol law enforcement on the street program bit the dust, then the task force model was defunded, which I thought was a mistake. I thought it was a great program from an investigatory standpoint. But the one that stood the test of time was our detention model. And here, I said all that to tell you this, that it to me, from an executive law enforcement officer and representing our community from a law enforcement perspective, it just seems to me that it serves overall purposes, in that if you want to dumb it all the way down, and that's how I think a lot of times, Daniel, is just that if we have somebody that has broken a law serious enough to be put in jail, all right? And that could be a variety of things. It could run the gamut from murder to public intox. But instead of us picking and choosing who those people are that we're going to check, to me, it really simplified it in that we could have some people that were actually trained within our facility that once folks were identified as potentially being in our country illegally after having been arrested for a state violation, okay? Then that process begins. And this is the way it looks, a snapshot of it. We have a questionnaire, if you will, during book-in, that all 13,000 people that are booked into the sheriff's office jail detention center are asked the same questions. Nobody is pulled out and asked different questions. Everybody is asked the same set of questions. Well, within those questions, there are certain questions that are asked about that will flag on country of birth and things of that nature. If those questions are answered in a manner that would send up a red flag, then our internal deputies that are cross-trained in immigration will pull that file, they will review it, and make a determination, okay, I'm going to move forward with this and talk to that person and try and determine to the best of my ability, are they here legally? Have we missed something? Are they here legally? Then after that, and a lot of them are, they wash them out right on the front end. Because a very small percentage, I will tell you, of those that come through are actually identified and flagged for detainers. Once our deputy makes a determination that to the best of their ability, they've determined that they are probably here illegally, they pick up the phone or communicate with immigration and say, I believe that we have a person that's probably in our country illegally. They're in our jail. It's yours. Here's the information. Then immigration will then pick it up and make a determination whether to put a hold on. We don't put a hold on people. I said all that to say that to me, the detention model should satisfy the majority of people in that it's only coming in contact with people that have broken the law that has caused them to be in jail. You know, and that's oversimplification, but we do task force with the FBI, Immigration, U.S. Marshals Service, DEA, but this is the one obviously that catches the most grief, but it never has until we had a change in administration. And from our perspective, we've changed nothing. We've done the same job for over 10 years, and I think done it very well.
Den?
I'll catch you up later. We're not gonna debate this, me and you here in front of everybody, because I just wanted you to be able to answer it in public, that question, because I get asked a lot. I know some of us others get asked a lot, and so I wanted to hear it from you, but some of the other questions I have, I'll talk to you in private about them. But thank you so much for answering.
You're welcome.
Good answer, thank you.
You're welcome.
JP Madison.
So what is the change for the administration? Is it that status violations are being held?
Well, I think that the way it began was before Trump ever took over. It was the rhetoric leading up to the election, in that, this is my opinion now that I'm going to give you, is that leading up to the election, I think people became very afraid when it started looking like he was probably going to be elected. And I think segments of our community that had seen significant gains felt like they were going to go significantly backwards, whether that's immigration or it's the LGBTQ group or whomever, you pick the group, but the ones that felt like they had made significant strides, I think, believed that they were going to go way backwards, okay? And then, so an example of this, Eva, is we have steering committee meetings annually. We've never had anybody come to these things. We put it out. We beg people to come. Oh, I know. And, well then, once the change was in, all of a sudden we've got a room full of people that are anticipating that the sheriff's office is going to do all these horrible things. Well, we've never done them. We're not going to do horrible things under my watch. We're going to continue doing business just as we've always done it. So that may not have answered your question to your satisfaction, but that's strictly my opinion, that I just think human rights activists really are afraid of where this administration is taking, what their
Well,
stance is.
but I mean, the stories you hear, I mean, are about, you know, a minister at a local church talked about one of the members of his congregation who entered the country legally. I mean, came in on proper papers, but they get expired. And I've helped a pro bono client who came here on papers, and, you know, life goes on and you just forget that you've got to renew something and you've got to go get an attorney to do it. And if I hadn't helped her through it, it would have been hard for her. And so this individual had something lapse, but it wasn't like he was not a productive member of society. His family was here. Well, he's been in Gina for over a year now, and his visa has been renewed, but because he doesn't physically have it in his possession, he's stuck there. And in the meantime, his family is out without anybody to, you know, help them with finances, anything. And it's just, you know, I mean, I understand that everyone that's put on an ICE hold is arrested for something initially. I get that. But they're not all offenses that you should be permanently detained. And so I understand that you can say that we've participated in 287G for a long time, but the way 287G is being applied by the feds is different today. And I think we should have some investment in making a decision on whether that's the right decision for Washington County today. Because you hear stories about families being broken up. And that's what we hear. And that's, you know, you're telling a different side of the story we heard today, but the story today, you know, sounds like we called ICE so that they could go pick up some woman who thought she was being released so we could arrest her in the parking lot. And now she can't make bonds, so she's being shipped to Gina. So, I mean, there's certainly an emotional component of it. And these are not people that entered the country illegally in many instances. They're still here on some kind of status issue. And I think we have a duty in our hearts to look at those people differently and say, you came in the right way, you did it the right way. It's just the system is hard with renewals and things. So I just feel like, you know, my constituents talk to me about this a lot.
Sure.
And you and I have talked about it a lot. And so I don't think we can just say 287G is the same. It's not today as it was. It's not, because of what ICE is holding people for. And I think we should look harder at that. So I know that's your decision, and I tell everybody the quorum court doesn't have the power to do this. And then they tell me to defund the jail, and I say, well, that's not really going to happen. I'm not defunding the jail. First of all, I can't do it alone. And second of all, I wouldn't put the people that work there or that stay there in harm's way in that respect. So, well, you have an exciting meeting ahead of you tomorrow, because I think I've gotten 12 invitations to the 287G meeting tomorrow. So I will be here at our committee meetings. So have fun.
Deputy Bowman.
Is that a threat? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Mr. Balls for asking that question. Your answer is the best explanation I've ever heard of that program. So I appreciate it. I better understand now than I did before. I guess the other question I've got is I read in the paper that the current administration in Washington is talking about getting something through Congress to help modify the I don't know how, I guess how we enforce drug laws or all kinds of things. I don't know a lot about what they're proposing, but it sounds like the proposal is aimed toward some of these nominal offenses not going to jail. Do you have any background on what they're talking about, what they're proposing?
Are you talking about federal or
Federal.
state?
But from what I understood, this is going to be something he's going to be asking to be applied nationwide.
There are continual conversations about our drug laws that they need to be revamped. I mean, I've sat on two different commissions, two different governors about prison reform, and one of the main topics is our drug offenses, and are we handling those appropriately? Are we discriminating against people because they're selling one drug and not another? And then when you look at now, when we're talking about changing sentencing guidelines, for instance, and we've got somebody that's been in jail for, and we're basically on the path to decriminalization of marijuana. I mean, whether you admit it or not, that's in the sites. And we've got, because of certain laws, that if you had a certain weight or you had distributed that drug a number of times, well, then you're sentenced to like 75 years in jail for selling marijuana. Well, in 5 years, if it's decriminalized, what do you do with that person? So I think a lot of that discussion is based on the sentencing rules that were, like the 3 strikes you're out, and where we really over-sentenced people because we were mad at them. I think that will probably all come into the conversation as to what do we do with these people that were probably sentenced to too long a terms based on where our country is now and their philosophy as it comes to drugs and all that kind of stuff. So Harvey, I'm not aware specifically of those conversations, but I think it's an ongoing conversation that's not necessarily new, unless the Trump administration has something really out of the box.
Well, I guess my perspective on the situation is it looks like that in a situation like that, if something is done substantially, it might reduce jail population on the front side. But long-term, it seems to me that legalization of another addictive drug like that is going to lead to more long-term, bigger problems.
Yeah. Remember this conversation that I try to have with you guys often. And it is that even though our jail is full, and it's my belief that drugs are the root cause of the majority of the people in there, they're not necessarily drug charges, okay? It may be a burglary, it may be some other offense, but the drugs caused it. So I don't know what percentage that would affect as far as drug charges not filling up our jail. We're still going to have people in there because they cannot function in society.
That was my point.
They just can't. But anyway.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Any other business? We're all ready to go home.
Don't forget to give Jeannie money.
Yep. Public comments. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
There's only 4 of us left. Somebody better make a motion.
It's not something that's working on your time, you've got to dedicate to that.